Okay, this is chapter 1 in managerial accounting section. We're in accounting 113, and again I've already put the lecture up for and the solutions. I believe we worked exercises. What did we work? I don't really remember in this chapter. Probably 1, 2, 3, or 4, but I do know I assigned this. Oh yeah. Yeah, we did work 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. And this is the last two we're going to work. We're going to work exercise 1.9. It's on page 49. It's out of chapter 1. And this is again, this deals again with cost behavior. But again, we've learned about variable costs, fixed costs. Do you remember variable costs, fixed costs, direct materials, direct labor overhead? Those are manufacturing costs. What else did we go over? We went over financial statement costs, which are again, on those you have administrative costs, selling costs, and then you have the product costs, which are again are materials, labor, and overhead for product. Then we have decision-making costs. Those are costs we call relevant, irrelevant, sunk costs, and opportunity costs. Those were all the things we covered in the earlier exercises 1 through 5. Now, exercises 8, or 9 and 10 are going to cover the same thing, fixed and variable, and it's going to cover some of those definitions too. But in this case, we're going to put numbers. We're going to really see, do we understand how to take these concepts and put numbers to them, and then understand what's going to happen to the numbers. With changes in volume, will costs go up or down? Do we understand the nature of any given cost? Let me see, I want to check my time. I got about till 15 after. All right, on this problem, let's review it. Again, this is exercise 1.9. This is a company, again, that makes shirts. You can see they're making shirts. And here are all their costs. And by the way, this is at the 20,000 level. What do I mean by that? They're making 20,000 shirts. All right, they're making 20,000 shirts at that level. They spend $7 on materials, $4 on labor, $1.50 on electricity, probably. That's variable manufacturing overhead. But out in the plant, that'll be electricity for the machines, the sewing machines. They spend $5 on fixed manufacturing overhead. That's heat, light, utilities, depreciation on the plant, the custodian salary, the guard salary, fixed selling expense. That's going to be the salaries and probably all the depreciation costs of the salesman facilities. That's an administrative building with, again, heat, light, utilities in there. And then fixed administrative expense, that will also be in the same building. This will just be the portion of the building. The people in there are going to be salespeople. These people are going to be administrative, vice president, president, CEO, department heads, chairs. And then sales commissions. These, by the way, notice this says fixed, fixed, fixed. All the rest of these are variable. Sales commissions are actually variable. And so are variable administrative expenses. I'm not really sure what's in there. Maybe some paper or pencils, maybe toner, I don't know. But again, as we make a shirt, what administrative expense is variable? I would guess, again, some just office supplies or toner that they use to file forms. Maybe some electricity for their equipment. But anyway, take a look. You've got, again, this is direct materials is variable. Direct labor is variable. Variable overhead is variable. Sales commissions are variable. And variable administrative expenses are variable. The one thing, do you remember that, again, whenever you see variable costs, you want to get them on their per unit basis. Variable cost against a constant per unit. And they're already there. We know that, again, it costs $7 for the material in a shirt. It costs $4 for the man or woman to make it. It costs $1.50 in electricity. And these, we really don't want these in this form. We really don't want to put these fixed costs in terms of unit. Do you remember why? Fixed costs, my salary is constant in total, but my salary varies per unit. It's very unstable. Do you remember if you take my salary and divide it by the number of students one semester, well, then the next semester, if you divide it by the number of students has changed. So my salary changes per student. It's not a constant number. Well, we don't want fixed costs on a per unit basis. So let's go back and get these, and let's put them on again, a total basis. And how do we do that? Well, these have been unitized, and they really shouldn't. Let's go back and just invert what they've done. They took the fixed costs and they divided by 20,000 shirts. So to get it back to the total fixed cost, we just go back and multiply it by 20,000 shirts. And we'll get these all in their total form. 20 times 5 is going to be 100,000. 2 times 350 is going to be 70,000. And 2 times 250 is going to be 50,000. Now, for the rest of the problem, and even in real life, it's much easier to work with these. Again, these are fixed costs, and they're in total. Remember, when fixed costs are in total, they're constant. So that's why we want them this way. We want them in their constant state. They're much easier to analyze. In other words, do you see how silly it would be if you said to me, hey, Chuck, what do you make? And I said to you, well, I make $3,000 per student, or it wouldn't be that much actually, probably about $300 per student. You know, you'd walk away thinking, well, what is that? I mean, how many students does he have? That's not meaningful to take a fixed cost and unitize it most of the time. Sometimes you do it, but most of the times you don't. In this case, if you came up to me and said, hey, Chuck, what do you make? And I said, well, I make $70,000. My salary has much more meaning, and it's much more trackable and understandable in its total form. Now, if you're talking about a gallon of gas, that doesn't make sense at all. If you say, hey, Chuck, what'd you pay for gas today? And I said, $42. Well, you know, that's not, you don't want the gas in the total. You want the gas per unit. You say, I paid $1.80 per gallon. In our society, variable costs are constant per unit. We already, in our society, it's very common for us, in most cases, if it's a fixed cost, we'll give it to you in total. If it's a variable cost, we'll give it to you per unit. If you go buy a candy bar, they don't say what's the cost of all the candy bars you're going to eat in a year. They give you the variable cost, the cost for one. So again, let's go back. We now have got this the way we want it. All the variable costs, again here. This is, by the way, these are costs per unit right here. And we've left the variable cost per unit. And by the way, if you add all these up, you do get 25, but we're never going to use that. Now, they ask us to do some analysis. I guarantee you this analysis is completely based on what we've been learning. Do we know what's going to happen to fixed and variable costs? And actually, many times, even though the concept is simple, let me go over it again. Fixed costs stay fixed in total, but per unit. As volume goes up, a fixed cost will go down per unit. Fixed costs, as volume goes down, the cost per unit of a fixed cost goes up. So again, fixed costs constant in total. They don't vary with volume, but again, if you do unitize a fixed cost, if you get it per unit, it'll go up when volume goes down, it'll go down when volume goes up. That's what happens with a fixed cost. With a variable cost, they stay constant per unit, like a gallon of gas, $1.80, $1.80, $1.80. But in total, variable costs vary. If you get 2 gallons of gas, or 3 gallons of gas, or 4 gallons of gas, it'll go up. The less gallons of gas you buy, it'll go down. Variable costs vary in total, and they stay constant per unit. Now, knowing those concepts, let's go back and see if we can apply them. And with this, the first question is, 1, it says if 18,000 units, shirts, and we're talking shirts here, if 18,000 shirts are produced and sold, that's different than produced. If they're produced and sold, you're going to have both production costs. See, produced means you're going to have direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. But if you sell them, then you're going to have selling and administrative costs, you see? If they sell produced and sold, then you've got more cost. If they would have just said produced, that's a little less cost. So anyway, it says if 18,000 units are produced and sold, what is the variable cost per unit produced and sold? Okay, the variable cost. Well, let's just go get it. It's right here. 7, 4, 150. And it does say it wants the production costs and the selling costs. You see, If they are produced and sold, there's production, materials, labor, and overhead. Now, let me see, and it does only want variable, so don't get any of these fixed. And then go ahead and get the sales commissions, because that's for the selling cost, and get the administrative costs, because they'll go along with, if you sell it, you usually have the administrative costs. So let's add those up in number 1. We would actually say variable costs of production. We could even write this up here: direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. And again, and they just want the variable. So we want these are all variable. Variable, direct materials are variable, direct labor is variable, overhead. And we want the variable selling commissions, and we want the variable administrative costs. And I think that was what, 7 plus direct labor was 4, and then 150 plus 150 for the variable overhead, plus the selling costs were, I think, just 50 cents. Notes, sales commissions were $1. Sorry about that. So sales commissions were $1, and then the administrative was 50 cents. And then we'll add that up. 7 and 4 is 11, 12, 13, and 250 cents. This is $14. Now try to remember, this cost is what? This is constant. Try to remember, this is constant per unit. This is just like the cost of a gallon of gas. Someday, probably you're going to buy a gallon of gas, it'll be 14 bucks. And if you buy 2 gallons, it'll be 28. So again, it'll keep going up. 3 gallons will be 42. Anyway, this is what they're after, but I guarantee you they're going to ask you, what if 22,000 units, they're going to go back and test you if you know what's going to happen. They're going to change volume and see if you know how to handle that. If 22,000 units are produced and sold, same thing, you see it's exact, what is the variable cost per unit produced and sold? It's the exact same question, but it says, what if you make 22,000? What are the production costs? What are the selling costs at 22,000? Now this is the key, they want it per unit. You see that? They want it per unit. Well, guess what? Per unit, nothing changes. If I said to you, what's the cost of a gallon of gas? And you said $1.80. And then I said, well, what if you buy 10 gallons? And you'd say, what's $1.80? What if you buy 20 gallons? It's $1.80 per gallon. That's what they're really asking you. And they're just seeing if you can get that. 2, they're seeing if you know. And you'd say, well, I know that it doesn't matter the volume. It's $14. That's the answer. All right. Let's do 3. If 18,000 units are produced and sold, look at the language is exactly the same. They're just seeing if you know how to handle volume, if you understand the costs. If 18,000 produced and sold, what is now? You look at the change in language. We're going from per unit now in total, a variable cost. All right, well, this is different. We're going to say, well, I know what? If 18,000 units are produced and sold, I know that each one costs $14, and that's going to be, I don't know, but I think I got a cheat sheet, and I can tell you. It's going to be $252,000. What do variable costs do in total? Variable costs, they vary in total, just like your gasoline. Gasoline's constant per unit, varies in total. All right, 4, change my color up here. 4, all right, if 22,000 units are produced, same exact wording, and sold, what is the, again, total amount, not per unit, but total, of variable cost? Well, again, they're seeing, do you know what will happen if we go up to 22,000 units in total? Well, hopefully you'd say, I know that it's going to vary. These are variable costs, 22,000 units times $14. That's going to be $308,000. And again, do you see the pattern here? They vary in total. So we see, this is proving what? What do variable costs do per unit? They stay constant per unit, but they vary in total. It's just trying to drive home with mathematics exactly what we've been discussing all along. Let's go to 5. If 18,000 units are produced, now hold it, it didn't say sold here, so be careful. if 18,000 units are just produced, what is the average fixed manufacturing cost per unit? Okay, this is a little more technical. So if 18,000 units are produced, that means we do not want to deal with any kind of selling or administrative expense, because it just wants production costs. Remember, production costs are direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. And you can have both variable overhead and fixed overhead. You know, there's obviously, that's variable overhead is usually electricity. Fixed overhead is heat, light, utilities, property taxes, stuff like that. So they're asking, what are our production costs, materials, labor, and overhead? And they want only the average fixed manufacturing cost per unit. All right, well, let's go get, we want to get materials, labor, overhead that is fixed. Well, direct materials are not fixed. Direct labor is not fixed. Variable manufacturing overhead is not fixed. But fixed manufacturing overhead is fixed. So that's it. And again, don't use the per unit. You might say, why not? Because that $5 that we had there is only relative. All right, my videotape stopped momentarily, but I'm picking it up where I think it left off. All right. Let me see here. I'm working part 5. And this comes out to 556. Just in case the videotape, you know, this might be redundant. I might be repeating myself. Let's go up and we'll do 5 again. It says if 18,000 units are produced, produced, not sold. It doesn't say sold, so again, ignore selling costs. It just says if 18,000 units are produced, what is the average fixed manufacturing cost? There's only one fixed, you know, if you look at production costs are materials, labor, and overhead, but they want the fixed. So that's only this one. They say, what is the manufacturing fixed cost, which is, use the 100,000. Don't use the $5. The $5 is only good at a 20,000 unit level. So use the $100,000, those stay constant. That's your constant total of fixed costs. And it says they want the average fixed cost per unit. So we divide by units and we get 556. Now let's take a look at what they want us to do in 6. In 6, it says if 22,000, the language is exactly the same. If 20,000 units are produced, same exact language. If 22,000 units are produced, what is the exact same question, average fixed manufacturing cost per unit? And once again, they want it per unit. They don't want it in total. But believe it or not, to get that, you have to go back and get it in total. You have to say, well, what was the fixed manufacturing cost? You know, it's materials, labor, and variable overhead are variable. They want fixed. So there's only one, 100,000, and it's for 22,000 units. So if we take $100,000 divided by 22,000 units, I think you get 454. I think that's right. Check my notes on that. Yes, that's right. Do you see what they're trying to demonstrate here? What happens to fixed costs? Fixed costs, do you see in total what they do? In total, fixed costs stay constant. But look how volatile they are per unit. Once again, what did volume do here? Volume went up and the cost went down. Do you see that? Volume went up and the per unit cost went down. Fixed costs are very volatile and change. So again, it's not good to really put them on a per unit basis. If you do, you have to know that. You have to know that they're not predictable. You know, fixed costs on a per unit basis are not the way we use prediction. Okay, let's go to 7. Okay, 7. If 18,000 units are produced, sounds almost the same as last time, what is the total amount of fixed manufacturing overhead? All right, we're dropping back to 18,000 units are produced. What is, now this changes, they want it per unit, but you see they want total this time. What is the total amount of fixed manufacturing overhead? Well, no matter how many units are produced, the fixed overhead is $100,000. It always is. So we can just say it doesn't matter. Well, again, volume does not matter if they want the total. And the total is equal to $100,000. 7. And let's do 8. I can tell you 8. Well, let me just push it up just a little bit. Oops. All these little marks I made don't work now that I've changed. Erase all this because none of these marks, as soon as those still work. They're still lined up. These aren't lining up. All right, rid of that. Number 8. All right. If 22,000, it's the same as 7. If 18,000, if 22,000 units are produced, exactly the same wording. What is the total? Do you see? It's the same one. Just saying we're going from 18 to 22. Same question. What is the total amount of fixed overhead? Do you see the author and I am driving home the point? Well, it doesn't matter what volume does. Volume does not matter if you want the total fixed cost. We can even put that total fixed. It'll stay the same. It'll be $100,000. These are, again, to drive home the points that we've seen, that we've talked about. What do variable costs do? They vary in total. What do fixed costs do? They stay constant in total. What do variable costs do per unit? They stay constant. What do variable costs do per unit? They are not constant. They change. So, all right. Now, we're going to go to exercise, let's see, 110. And again, I think it's real similar. Let me just change this. Same page, chapter 1. This will be exercise 110. And let me erase this. Oh, it actually is based on the same information. You know what? Yeah, that is. Okay, so we'll just leave that up there. And I'll just... Give me a second here. Back in action. Back in action. Okay. So certainly let's see if it will work. All right. All right, here's exercise 110, same page 49, chapter 1, same topic, same data. Same data. All right. Alrighty. We can leave that up there. Does this still? No, it's a little bit off. If I could bring that down just a hair, that would line up. Let me see if I can. That's real close. That was close as I'm going to get it. Okay. It moved a little bit there. Doggone it. There. Close again. Okay. Again, we got this, the header's back right. And again, this is exercise 110. And in this one it says, do use the exact same data set and ask some more questions. This is getting into more decision making. In other words, it's asking you to think, again, along the same terms, but to try and predict costs and make decisions. What is, in this question 1, by the way, let's go ahead and label this. We'll say this is the start of exercise 1-10. And again, we'll start with, this will be part 1, question 1. What is the incremental manufacturing cost incurred if the company increases production? I know you can, ION. if the company increases production from 20,000 to 20,001 units. Remember this whole problem? We said we're making 20,000 units. What if they make 20,000? And this is going back and saying, do you understand? Do you remember relevant costs? Relevant, when we said relevant costs, we called them differential costs. Do you remember that? Relevant and differential costs? Well, that's exactly what they're saying. What costs will change? When you go from 20,000 to 20,001, what costs and the costs that change your decision-making costs, relevant costs. All right, and it says, but it is, the wording's picky, what is the incremental manufacturing cost? All right, that doesn't mean we're going to look at all of them then. It means manufacturing is materials, labor, and variable and fixed overhead. So they're saying, what will happen if they increase production by just 1 unit? Well, that will mean that what's going to happen? Well, by the way, if you go back, all these will change except for which one stays the same? The fixed overhead won't change because by nature it stays fixed. That's again what we're trying to drive the point home. So the variable cost will change, just like gas. If you buy 1 more gallon of gas, you're going to pay another $1.80. If you make 1 more of these, okay, let's take. If you make 1 more of these, you're going to pay for direct materials, you're going to pay for direct labor, you're going to pay for variable overhead, and that should be it. Do you see? When they make the shirt, if they make 1 more shirt, they got to get the material. If they make 1 more shirt, the man or woman has to sew it and stitch it and cut it and put it together. And if they make 1 more shirt, they have to have the electricity. That's the variable overhead. So we'll add that up. But you don't have to pay a penny more for the fixed. So this is going to be, as we said, 7 plus 4. I think that was it. 7 plus 4. And the variable overhead is $1.50. So the answer to this is $11.12.50. If you make 1 more shirt, your cost will change by $12.50 for manufacturing. It will not. That $5 right there, it will not change because fixed costs stay constant. That $100,000 won't change a bit. Now, in 2, they say, what is the incremental cost? It starts out the same, but this time it says the incremental cost if the company increases production and sales by just 1 unit, from 20,000 to 20. But they want to know the incremental cost incurred if the company increases production and sales. All right, well, that's different. We're going to have all the production costs, but once again, no fixed cost will change. But because we're going to sell it too, we're going to pick up the sales commission, has to be paid to the salesmen or women, and the variable administration costs will increment up. Whatever that is, toner or electricity or forms being filled out or paper, that will increment up too. So we go back and say, in 2, we will still have the direct materials. Let's go ahead and label them again. Direct materials. We'll have the direct labor. We'll have the variable overhead. And now we're also going to pick up incremental costs, not fixed, they won't change, but the sales commissions and the variable administrative. So we'll say, well, let's add the sales commissions, SC, and the variable, I'll call it ADM, administrative. We're going to add all those. These are your manufacturing costs right here. These are your selling costs, and that's what they ask for. If the company, they produce it and they sell it. Well, let's go back. We know this is the same. 7 plus 4 plus $1.50. We know that the selling cost, the salesman's commission is $1 plus the 50 cents for that small amount for administrative. That's 7, 11, 12, 13, 14. Did we have a 14 earlier? Oh, yeah. That is the variable cost. So that is the incremental cost, yeah. Okay, so that comes out to be $14. Actually, that links up for me too. Again, what is going to be your, you make 1 more shirt and you sell. Well, now the shirt's not just made, but it's sold. So you've got to pay the commission to the man or the woman, and you have to pay for the variable paperwork that has to be done, and some of the computer time, the electricity on the computer time. And by the way, this does link up with what? Up here it said, what are all the variable costs? Well, the variable costs, that does make sense, that number 1 from here is number 2 from here, because guess what's going to happen? If you sell 1 more shirt and make 1 more shirt, the $14 will be your incremental cost. 3, Let's do 3. Assume that Cuban, that's the name of this company, Cuban Company produced 20,000 shirts and expects to sell 19,800. It looks like they're going to have 200 shirts left. But after a new customer, this is again their expectation. They're going to produce 20,000 shirts. I think they'll sell 19,800. That leaves 200 shirts in inventory. Done. But again, a new customer unexpectedly emerges and expresses an interest in buying the 200 extra units. The customer wants to buy the units, and if they don't buy them, they'll just remain unsold in inventory. What is the incremental manufacturing cost per unit incurred to sell these units to the customer? Now this one's a little bit different. What is the incremental, look at this is so technical, the words, incremental manufacturing cost per unit. All right, they want the incremental, that's the change, manufacturing cost per unit. They don't want, but the way they sell that, again, they're not asking for the selling cost. They're saying what is the incremental manufacturing cost if you do want to sell these units to this customer. Well, the answer for that is that they're already made. Since they're already made, there are no incremental. I mean, let's go back and say, if they're already made, we already got the $14 in them. In fact, you could call this cost a sunk cost. It's gone. The $14 there's no increment. The units are already made. Is there going to be any incremental fixed cost? Well, no, there won't be any incremental fixed costs either, because they stay the same. So the answer to this is 0. There are 0 incremental. All right, hopefully you caught that. My recorder only tapes 15-minute increments. But there's 0 incremental costs because the shirts are already made. 4, assume that Cuban Company, oh, this is the same one again. I can see it. It's the exact same thing. Assume that Cuban, it's the same question. Let me just push it up a little bit so we can see it. Once again, I got to erase this because these lines don't really line up anymore. Okay, we're here. I can't see it, but I know. Here it is. This is 4. That's 4. This was 3. This was 1. This was 2. The numbers are shifted so you can't see them. Assume that Cuban Company produced 20,000 units and expects to sell 19,800 of them. If a new customer unexpectedly emerges and expresses an interest, I know it sounds the same because it is the same as the last question. If the new emerges and expresses an interest in buying the 200 extra units that have been produced by the company and that would otherwise remain unsold, what is the incremental selling and administrative cost per unit? Now this is different. Before, they asked what is the incremental manufacturing cost per unit. Manufacturing cost is direct materials, direct labor, fixed and variable overhead. No, not fixed. Just direct materials, direct labor, and variable overhead. I'm just looking at my wording on that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, this really, I think I did it wrong. Had been produced, what is the incremental manufacturing cost per unit? Yeah, in 3, what is the incremental manufacturing cost per unit? And what did I write over here for 3? That is right, 0. That is right. And what is 2? What is here? Yep, that's right, 2. The company increases production. All right, everything's okay, sorry. Now, in this one, though, they want to know if we make 20,000 shirts and, again, sell 19,800, and we have 200 left. And then a customer comes up and says, well, I want to buy it. What's the incremental cost to make the shirts? Nothing, because they're already made. But they aren't sold yet. So if they say what's the incremental cost to sell them, well, what are the incremental costs? Well, the incremental costs, I push this up so you can't see it regrettably, but what are the incremental costs to sell the shirts? Trying to line that up again. Fooey on that. The incremental cost to sell is right here. If you sell the shirts, you pay for every shirt you sell, you pay $1 commission to a salesman or woman, and you pay 50 cents for the paperwork and some of the electrical costs of the computer time. So anyway, it's $1.50. So in 4, the answer is, it is, again, these are the selling costs. It would be the $1 commission plus the 50 cents. So it is $1.50 per shirt. And do they ask, I do want to see one other thing. Do they ask that? Yeah, they only ask for the per unit. They say, what is the incremental per unit cost? So it's $1.50. I'm going to add one thing. If they sell, they didn't ask for this, but if they sell the 200 shirts, what's going to be the total incremental cost? Well, 200 shirts, it costs them again, that's $1 for the sales commission and 50 cents for the handling. That's going to be $300. So $300, that's not asked for, is the total cost, incremental cost to sell the shirts. I would say, obviously, do you see the nature of this? That if this person said to you, I want to buy these shirts, well, you'd be very foolish to sell them. What if they said they'll give you $1 for each shirt? Well, you wouldn't want to do that. You see that? You want to do that because it's going to cost you $1.50 to, again, for the commission and you know, again, for the 50 cents handling. So they're really saying to you, again, if you're looking at this from a decision-making standpoint, you would not want to sell that for any less than $1.50. If you sell this to the customer, you want $1.50 per shirt. That's just to break even. Now, really, if you want to recoup all your costs, you'd say, I want what? I want $1.50 for the shirt, and I want $14 for the shirt. That would give you, well, actually, that just duplicated that. I take it back. You would want, take it back, you'd want the $12.50 if you said to this customer, to recoup my costs that I already spent, my sunk costs, I want $12.50, and I also want $1.50, $14. But remember, these are sunk costs. They really are irrelevant. You're just trying to bargain and barter with this customer. Anything you get over $1.50 is better than you know, getting. In fact, actually, if you get $1.50 or more, you're better off. Because otherwise, you've just got 200 shirts sitting in inventory doing nothing. Now, you might make the counterpoint that, well, we could sell them to somebody else. You might be able to. You know, that's a good suggestion. But if you don't think they are, let's consider unique shirts. Let's say they say something like Home Depot, and they've already been made. And you think, well, nobody wants a Home Depot shirt. And very few people want a shirt that says Home Depot other than a Home Depot employee. So you say, well, somebody comes along and offers you $1.75 for these shirts. And you think, I don't know if anybody else will buy a Home Depot shirt. So again, I'm just going to go ahead. What if it was something weird like a company that you don't like the name? Like how about, I don't know, Chick-fil-A. I don't know why, but I wouldn't want a Chick-fil-A shirt. No offense, Chick-fil-A. But, you know, again, if you say, well, I got 200 Chick-fil-A shirts, I don't think anybody wants a Chick-fil-A shirt. I wouldn't mind having a Home Depot shirt, but that's just my taste. No pun intended. But again, you might really say, I'll take whatever, I'll take the $1.50 just to get rid of the shirts, because I don't think I can get rid of Chick-fil-A shirts. Anyway, we are now done with Chapter 1. I would suggest you guys study this. I'll test it heavily. Even though we're not having class, I will hold you to the same standard that I'd hold you to if we have class. But we now will move on to Chapter 5 in this same book. When we move on to Chapter 5 in this same textbook, I'll post that, and it's on CVP. CVP stands for Cost, Value, Profit. Again, we're going to get into cost, value, profit, and break even. That's the only other thing we're going to study out of managerial accounting, and then we'll go on to some tax work towards the end of this course. All right, I'll shut down and let you go.